At 3 a.m. Thursday, Israel killed the man who closed the Strait of Hormuz. He survived 2 previous assassination waves, the one in June 2025, the one at the start of this war in February. For 26 days, while missiles fell on Tel Aviv and the global economy hemorrhaged above $100 oil, Admiral Alireza Tangsiri was still alive, still in Bandar Abbas, still personally posting on X which ships were permitted to pass and which would be turned back. On March 24th, his last post celebrated turning away a container ship called the Sealan. 2 days later, a precision strike found his apartment. The Strait of Hormuz is still closed. Hold 3 questions. 1. CENTCOM said Tangsiri's death makes the region safer. The IDF called it a collapse of Iran's maritime capability. But the strait is still closed. Ships are still blocked. Iran's parliament is drafting a $2 million per vessel toll law as this is published. If the man who designed and ran the blockade is dead, why is the blockade still intact? 2. Tangsiri was not the first to die. Before him, Israel killed the supreme leader, the national security chief, the Basij commander, the intelligence minister, the armed forces chief of staff, 3 missile scientists, and the IRGC security headquarters team. Each death was announced as decisive. The war is on day 26. The missiles keep flying. The strait stays closed. At what point does eliminating every named commander stop being a strategy and start being evidence that the strategy isn't working? 3. Iran's parliament speaker Ghalibaf, Trump's claimed negotiating partner, was reportedly removed from Israel's kill list at Pakistan's request this week to allow diplomacy. So Israel removed 1 Iranian from the list to enable talks, then killed another the same night. Who controls the strategy? And do Washington and Tel Aviv agree on whether they are fighting a war or ending one? The answers all live in Bandar Abbas, and a 21-mile waterway that has reshaped the global economy since February 28th. To understand what died with Tangsiri, you need 1 number, 1 place, and 1 8-year pattern. The number is 21. That is how many confirmed attacks Iran carried out on merchant ships before Thursday. Bulk carriers, tankers, container ships, crewed by sailors from Thailand, India, the Philippines, Turkey, Norway, all under Tangsiri's command. The place is Bandar Abbas, Iran's largest naval port on the northern shore of the strait, directly overlooking the 21-mile choke point through which 20% of the world's oil passes every day. That is where Tangsiri was sitting at 3 a.m. Thursday morning, in an apartment, hiding, still operating. The 8-year pattern. Tangsiri took command of the IRGC Navy in August 2018. Under him, thousands of naval mines acquired, maritime drone fleet built and weaponized, attack drone boats deployed against tankers, naval capabilities transferred to Russia and Syria. And during this war, the architecture of closure, every ship turned back, every exemption selectively granted, every $2 million coordination fee demanded. That is what Israel killed at 3 a.m. Thursday. But that isn't the real question. The real question is what it did not kill. Start with the smallest detail. On March 10th, Tangsiri posted on X in Persian, "No vessel associated with the aggressors against Iran has the right to pass through the Strait of Hormuz. If you have any doubt, come closer and test it." That was not bravado. It was an operational order posted publicly, visible to every ship captain in the Gulf, every insurer in London, every oil trader in Singapore. On March 24th, 2 days before his death, his last post announced the sullen container vessel had been turned away for failure to comply with legal protocols. His final act on social media was enforcing the blockade from an apartment while Israeli intelligence was tracking his location. The structural picture. Before this war, 138 ships transited Hormuz daily. As of March 26th, that number is near 0 for vessels linked to U.S. and Israeli interests. Over 1,000 ships anchored outside, 20,000 sailors stranded. Tanker traffic dropped 70% in the first week. The IEA released 400 million barrels of strategic reserves. Oil is still above $100. The doctrine Tangsiri built over 8 years is not stored in a single body. It is embedded in the command structure, the mine placement maps, the drone boat procedures, and the $2 million toll collection process now being formalized into law. Killing the architect does not erase the architecture. Here is what the strike in Bandar Abbas officially destroyed. Dead. Admiral Alireza Tangsiri, IRGC Navy commander for 8 years. Killed in a precision IDF airstrike with precise intelligence guidance from military intelligence and the Navy's intelligence branch. Also dead. Behnam Rezai, head of IRGC Navy Intelligence Directorate. Multiple unnamed senior commanders. IDF. The killing of Tangsiri and the IRGC Navy leadership constitutes an additional significant blow to the command and control arrays of the IRGC and its abilities to orchestrate terror activities in the maritime domain. CENTCOM. Tangsiri commanded the IRGCN for 8 years, during which the IRGC harassed thousands of innocent merchant mariners, attacked hundreds of vessels with one-way attack drones and missiles, and killed countless innocent civilians. Edmund Fitton Brown, Foundation for Defense of Democracies. The elimination of Admiral Tangsiri and decimation of the IRGC Naval Command comes after the destruction of over 90% of the Iranian Navy's large ships, compounding a collapse of Iran's maritime capability. 90% of the large naval vessels Iran operated at the start of this war, 90% are destroyed. But that wasn't the real issue, because destroying the command structure of a navy is not the same as destroying its operational capability. And there is a distinction between those two things that the official statements have not addressed clearly. The real shift was somewhere else entirely. Iran did not build a conventional navy to close Hormuz. It built an asymmetric one, the IRGC Navy's weapons. Naval mines, cheap, impossible to clear under fire, active for months. Fast attack craft, small, radar-elusive, armed with anti-ship missiles. Armed drone boats, unmanned, expendable. Coastal missile launchers along 1,500 kilometers of Iranian shoreline. None of those require Tangsiri to operate. None are stored in a single building. They are dispersed, prepositioned, delegated to provincial commanders. The same mosaic doctrine keeping ballistic missiles flying after 8,000 coalition airstrikes. Jonathan Saye, at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, stated the structural problem. There are two challenges with leadership decapitation. First, the regime has numerous commanders, most of them armed. More importantly, the body of the armed forces can still threaten the Strait of Hormuz. Targeting senior leadership must be paired with a strategy to induce mid-level commanders to defect. The mines are still in the water. The drone boats are operational. The fast attack craft are still in Bandar Abbas harbor. The mid-level commanders who run them are still alive. That's when the balance shifted. The question is not whether Tangsiri's death weakens Iran's navy. It does. The question is whether it weakens it enough, and by what deadline. Here is what happened on the same night Israel killed the man who closed the strait. Before sunrise, on March 26th, Iran fired fresh missile waves at Israel and U.S. bases in Kuwait, Jordan, and Bahrain. Hezbollah continued rockets into northern Israel. Iran's official response to the U.S. 15-point peace plan arrived one-sided and unfair. Rejected. The same night Tangsiri died, the war accelerated in every other dimension. Iran's parliament simultaneously advanced a law to formally charge vessels $2 million for Hormuz passage. The GCC called it illegal. International maritime law calls it illegal. Iran's parliament is writing it into statute anyway. This changed everything. We are not watching a navy collapsing. We are watching a navy transitioning from military blockade to legal commercial chokehold, from Tangsiri's personal authority to institutional parliamentary authority. The architect died. The architecture is getting a building permit. But before we get to whether any of this can be resolved by Saturday, when Trump's 5-day pause on strikes against Iranian power plants expires and the March 28th deadline arrives, we need to understand something about Tangsiri personally that the official statements didn't say. He had survived this before. Stay with this. In June 2025, Israel's assassination campaign swept through Iran's senior military command. Tangsiri survived. His navy kept functioning. In February 2026, the opening night of this war, U.S. and Israeli strikes killed Khamenei, the defense minister, the IRGC commander, dozens of officials. Tangsiri survived again. He moved to Bandar Abbas, went underground, kept posting on X. Al Jazeera's Hashem Ahilbara noted Thursday. He was one of those commanders who survived the two waves of assassinations, the one in 2025 and the one in 2026. But at the end, he was killed in Bandar Abbas. The significance? Tangsiri was not surprised by attempts on his life. He was hiding and still operating, which means the IRGC Navy has been functioning in a degraded, dispersed mode since at least February 28th, and was still capable of maintaining the blockade through 26 days of continuous coalition airstrikes. If the Navy was already operating without a fixed command post, already distributing authority to provincial units, already conducting operations from concealed civilian locations, what exactly changes when the man hiding in the apartment is gone? Without warning, the most significant thing about Tangsiri's death may not be what it eliminates. It may be what it reveals about how much the IRGC has already adapted. Official narrative from Israel and CENTCOM, devastating blow, collapse of maritime capability. The region is safer. Operational reality on March 26th. The strait is still effectively closed to American and Allied vessels. Iran's parliament is formalizing toll collection. 1,000 ships remain at anchor. 20,000 sailors remain stranded. Oil is above $100. The mines that Tangsiri deployed are still in the water, and removing them under active hostilities is a different operation entirely from killing the man who ordered them placed. Netanyahu. We continue to strike the targets of the Iranian terror regime with full force. Iran's military, same day, fired missiles at Israel, fired on U.S. bases, advanced toll legislation. The contradiction is not subtle. Devastating blow and Hormuz still closed are not compatible sentences if the goal was reopening the waterway. But there is a third dimension to what Tangsiri's death means that neither the IDF statement nor the CENTCOM statement addressed. It involves Saturday. It involves a number. And it involves the one diplomatic move that happened alongside the strike that has received almost no attention. The real shift may not be what was killed. It may be what was deliberately not killed. On the same day Israel killed Tangsiri, the Times of Israel reported that Iranian Foreign Minister Aragchi and Parliament Speaker Ghalibaf had been removed from Israel's active kill list, at Pakistan's explicit request to preserve the diplomatic channel. Think through the sequence. Israel agreed not to kill the two Iranians most directly involved in any potential negotiated settlement. Then it killed the most senior military figure responsible for the primary economic weapon, the Hormuz closure, that gives Iran its leverage at the table. If Tangsiri's death weakens Iran's blockade capability, it reduces the pressure on Trump to make concessions in a peace deal. A weaker Iran negotiates worse terms. If Iran reads this as intent, use assassination to reshape diplomatic balance, the closure may intensify, not ease, as Tehran uses remaining leverage before it loses more. Mohsen Rezais, Khamenei's military advisor, Monday. If they make this mistake, we will paralyze them and sink them in the Persian Gulf. The March 28th deadline expires Saturday. Trump's 5-day pause on power plant strikes ends. The admiral is dead. The waterway is still closed. Neither side has indicated what happens next. For Israel, Thursday was a strategic milestone. The blockade architect is gone. Naval intelligence chief gone. 90% of Iran's large naval vessels destroyed. This is the most comprehensive degradation of Iran's maritime capability in modern history. For Iran, Thursday confirmed what it already knew. No officer above a certain rank is safe anywhere in the country. Whether that accelerates defection or consolidates resistance among provincial commanders is the critical variable in the next 72 hours. For the global economy, Thursday changed nothing yet. Ships still anchored. Tanker freight rates still at record levels. Goldman Sachs still projects triple-digit oil through 2027. An admiral's death does not unclog a blocked waterway. For 20,000 sailors stranded near the strait, Thursday was another day of waiting. This wasn't just a military strike. 4 layers shifted. Militarily, IRGC Navy lost its commander, intelligence chief, and entire senior leadership. 90% of large surface fleet already destroyed. What remains, mines, drone boats, fast attack craft, coastal missiles, operates under dispersed mid-level command. Degraded, still dangerous. Economically, oil dropped on news of Tangsiri's death, then stabilized when markets processed the mosaic doctrine and toll legislation. The strait will not reopen because one admiral died. Brent is still above $100. Politically, removing Aragchi and Ghalibaf from the hit list while killing Tangsiri reveals deliberate sequencing. Protect the diplomats, eliminate the militarists. Whether Iran reads that as a signal toward negotiation or an insult depends entirely on calculations being made in Tehran right now. Strategically, does Iran's remaining dispersed capability maintain the blockade? Does it escalate to Bab el-Mandeb if more commanders fall? The question is whether degradation reaches the threshold where the mosaic collapses, or whether it just adapts again. One development from Thursday reframes everything, and it came from Iran's parliament, not the battlefield. As Israel confirmed Tangsiri's death, Iranian state media reported lawmakers were finalizing legislation to formally charge vessels a toll for Hormuz passage. The GCC called it illegal. International maritime law calls it illegal. Iran's parliament is writing it into statute anyway. Iran is converting the Hormuz closure from a military tactic into an institutional, legal, permanent structure. The blockade began as a weapon of war. It is being redesigned as a revenue stream and a sovereignty claim. When it becomes law, removing it requires not military pressure, but a legal settlement that Iran's parliament must ratify. Tangsiri ran the military version. His replacement will run the institutional version. The closure doesn't end when the admiral dies. It ends when the law is repealed. Here is what Thursday actually resolved, and what it left completely open. It resolved whether Alireza Tangsiri would survive this war. He did not. The man who built Iran's asymmetric naval capability, who personally designed and executed the Hormuz blockade, who survived 2 assassination waves and kept posting on X while hiding from Israeli targeting, is dead. What it left open is the only question that matters to the 20,000 sailors waiting on anchored ships. Does the strait reopen? The physical answer requires clearing mines under active hostilities. It requires suppressing fast attack craft that no longer need a commander to operate. It requires dismantling a toll collection system that Iran's parliament is in the process of writing into national law. And it requires either a military operation that U.S. allies have refused to support, or a diplomatic agreement that both sides have publicly said doesn't exist. Unexpectedly, the most honest assessment came not from a government, but from a single data point. 2 days before he died, Alireza Tangsiri turned away the Ceylon container ship and posted about it publicly. He was hiding in an apartment, hunted by the most sophisticated intelligence apparatus in the Middle East. and he was still operating the blockade from his phone. The apparatus is intact. The doctrine is institutionalized. The Parliament is writing it into law. The Admiral is dead. The Strait of Hormuz is still closed. Saturday is in 48 hours.